Tonight, you're going to check your bank balance. Just a quick glance. And for a second, something in your chest tightens, even though you did everything right this month. You paid your bills on time, you skipped the extra coffee, you still feel behind. But the real reason has almost nothing to do with your spending habits. It has to do with a business model that was never really about helping you get ahead. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your bank is not on your team. It never was. It smiles at you in the app, sends you cheerful notifications, calls itself your financial partner. But underneath the friendly branding is a machine built on a very specific bet. The bet is that you will stay close to broke forever without ever quite falling apart. Why would a bank want that? Wouldn't a wealthy customer be more valuable? Actually, no. A wealthy customer who pays off their balance every month is close to worthless to a bank's bottom line. A stressed customer, living paycheck to paycheck, carrying a small revolving balance, missing a payment here and there, that customer is gold. Every late fee, every overdraft charge, every month of minimum payments on a credit card, that is where the real profit lives.
Let's go back further, because this didn't start with your bank. It started with the entire architecture of modern lending. Economist Hyman Minsky spent decades studying financial systems, and he built something called the financial instability hypothesis. His core idea was simple and a little unsettling. Stability itself creates the conditions for crisis. When things feel calm and safe, people borrow more. Banks lend more. Debt quietly piles up in the background, invisible, until it isn't. Minsky wasn't talking about your personal credit card. He was talking about entire economies. But the same logic runs straight through your wallet. The system is not designed around the idea of you staying debt-free. It is designed around the idea of manageable, ongoing debt. Comfortable debt. Debt that never quite disappears, but never quite explodes either. Think about how a credit card actually works. The minimum payment isn't a mistake. It isn't there by accident. It is a carefully calculated number, engineered to keep your balance alive for as long as legally possible, while collecting interest the entire time. Pay only the minimum on a typical card, and a balance that could have been cleared in 2 years can stretch past 2 decades. 2 decades of interest on a purchase you probably don't even remember making.
Does that feel intentional to you? It should, because it is. Here's where behavioral economics enters the picture. Richard Thaler, who won a Nobel Prize for his work on how people actually behave with money, rather than how textbooks assume they behave, showed something crucial. Humans are not the perfectly rational decision makers classical economics imagined. We are swayed by framing, by small nudges, by what feels easy in the moment. A low minimum payment feels easy. A tiny monthly number feels manageable. That feeling is the entire strategy. Banks don't need you to understand compound interest. They need you to feel okay hitting the button that says pay minimum amount due. That single design choice, repeated across millions of accounts, generates more revenue than almost any other part of the banking system. Now let's talk about overdraft fees, because this is where it gets even more direct. In the United States alone, banks have collected billions of dollars every year from overdraft and insufficient funds charges. And research has repeatedly shown something striking. A small percentage of customers account for a hugely disproportionate share of that revenue. These aren't random accidents spread evenly across every customer. They are concentrated again and again among people already living close to the edge financially.
Milton Friedman, one of the most influential economists of the 20th century, argued that in a truly free market, competition should eventually drive down costs and improve outcomes for consumers. But banking doesn't quite work like a normal free market. Switching banks is annoying. Direct deposits, automatic bills, and years of transaction history make people sticky, reluctant to move, even when a better option exists elsewhere. That stickiness is not an accident of convenience. It is, in many ways, the whole point. So what does all of this actually cost you day to day? It costs you the illusion of small numbers. $25 here, $35 there, a slightly higher interest rate you didn't think to negotiate. None of it feels dramatic in the moment.
But add it up over 10 years, and you are looking at thousands of dollars quietly transferred from your future to your bank's earnings report. Here's the part that should really bother you. This isn't a conspiracy hiding in the shadows. It's published, publicly traded, sitting right there in annual reports. Banks openly report revenue from interest income, from card fees, from account service charges. It's not secret. It's just boring enough and confusing enough that most people never actually read it. You never notice that your bank statement is written in a language specifically designed to be skimmed, not understood. Words like minimum payment, grace period, and average daily balance sound harmless, but each one hides a mechanism quietly working in the background, month after month. So where does that leave you? Not powerless, not stuck, just informed, finally, about a system you were never taught to question. Here is the reframe. The system doesn't need you to be broke forever. It needs you to be uncertain. Uncertain enough to carry a small balance instead of paying it off completely. Uncertain enough to keep less than $100 in checking, so one bad week triggers an overdraft. Uncertain enough to never quite ask why the minimum payment number is what it is. The moment you understand the mechanism starts to lose its grip. Paying off a credit card balance in full each month isn't just good discipline. It's a direct refusal to participate in the part of the system built to profit from delay. Keeping a buffer in your checking account isn't paranoia. It's removing the exact condition banks depend on to charge you for being human and occasionally running short.
None of this requires becoming a different person overnight. It requires seeing the design for what it is. A minimum payment button that whispers, "This is fine," is not a neutral piece of software. It is a decision made by people who understood behavioral economics far better than most of their customers ever will. Annamaria Lusardi, an economist who has spent years researching financial literacy across the world, has found something sobering. Financial knowledge alone doesn't guarantee financial security, but financial knowledge does change how people interact with these exact traps. People who understand how interest compounds behave differently than people who don't. People who understand the true cost of a minimum payment make different choices at the exact moment that matters. That's the quiet power sitting underneath all of this. Not a dramatic rebellion against your bank, just a slightly more informed version of you, reading the fine print you used to skip, asking the questions you used to avoid, noticing the mechanism instead of only feeling its effects. Let's slow down for a moment on something most people never think to question. Why does a bank offer you a higher credit limit right when you're already close to using what you have? It feels like a reward. It feels like trust. But raise the ceiling on a room and people rarely stop to measure how high it actually is. They just keep filling the space available to them.
This is a well-documented pattern in consumer credit research. Higher available limits are consistently linked to higher spending, even among people who never intended to spend more. Not because people suddenly become reckless, because the limit itself quietly resets what feels normal. A $5,000 ceiling makes an $800 purchase feel small. A $500 ceiling makes that exact same purchase feel enormous. Same amount of money, completely different feeling. That feeling is not an accident. It is a lever, and your bank knows exactly how to pull it. Have you ever wondered why so many credit card rewards programs feel almost too generous? 2% cash back, airline miles, hotel points. It feels like the bank is doing you a favor. But rewards programs are only profitable when a meaningful share of cardholders carry a balance and pay interest. The points are the bait. The interest is the business. Industry research on card economics has repeatedly shown that reward card holders, on average, are more likely to carry revolving debt than holders of no-frills cards. The free flight isn't free. It's a very carefully priced product, and the price is usually paid in interest charges that outweigh the value of the miles many times over. None of this means rewards cards are evil, or that credit itself is a trap you should avoid entirely. Credit, used correctly, is one of the most useful financial tools available to you.
The problem was never the tool. The problem is using a tool you were never taught to fully understand, built by people who study your psychology for a living. Here's something else worth sitting with. Banks spend enormous amounts of money on behavioral design, on app interfaces, on the exact wording of a text alert. Every color, every button placement, every notification timing is tested, refined, and optimized. Not randomly, deliberately. The industry even has a name for it: choice architecture. It's the same discipline Thaler helped pioneer, originally intended to help people make better decisions through smart defaults. But the exact same tools that can nudge someone towards saving more can just as easily nudge someone towards spending more, or delaying a payoff a little longer than they should. Ask yourself honestly, when your banking app shows your balance in a large, calm blue font, does the number feel less urgent than it should? When it prompts you toward the minimum payment button first, in a soft, friendly color, does it feel like the safe choice? These aren't accidents of graphic design. They are decisions, tested across millions of users, chosen because they work.
So tonight, when you check your bank balance again, notice what's actually happening underneath the number on the screen. Notice the quiet architecture built, patiently, around the assumption that you'll stay a little uncertain, a little behind, a little too busy to look closely. And know that the tightening in your chest was never really about how much you earn. It was about a system that only works this well when you don't understand it. Now you do.